going on, guys? It's another edition of Timeout. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with my co-host, Mr. Chris Cuff. How you doing today, buddy?
Oh, Peter, it is a great day. The Buccaneers, man, last night, Tom showed he still has his magic, but I wish he wouldn't hold it until like the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. Can he spread it out a little bit, But hey, it's Tom, and he brought him through. So I'm feeling good today, man. How about you? What kind of day did you have?
It was definitely a long night, if you will, because the majority of that Bucs game was absolutely terrible. But we'll definitely get into your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Locally, also talk about the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then go around the National Football League as Week 13 saw not as many underdogs. In fact, the favorites this week, 12-1-1. So we'll talk about that. Some stories off the field about Baker Mayfield, OBJ, Lamar Jackson. And then, of course, it's the greatest time of the year besides the National Football League. It's the college football playoff. We have our 4 teams. We'll see if college football got it correct. And then maybe we'll touch on some World Cup. Also, once again, going back to college football. Yes. Jackson State no longer has a coach there because Deion Sanders has chosen Colorado. We'll get your thoughts on that. And then
Yes.
Of course, locally here, USF finally has their new coach. So let's start off in Tampa as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come back in Tom Brady fashion. In fact, his 44th comeback, fourth quarter win, surpassing Peyton Manning. Unbelievable as the Bucs take care of business over the New Orleans Saints. And I got to throw some statistics out at you here, Chris.
Yes.
Tom Brady during the regular season, 0-37, 1-43, including playoffs when trailing by at least 13 points in the fourth quarter. Now, check this out. The last time he had that big of a comeback was Super Bowl 51 versus the Atlanta Falcons, 28-3.
28-3. Who's going to forget that?
He takes care of business last night, leading this team down. And who knows, because if the Saints win this game, this division already being one of the worst in football could have been upside down.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And Leonard Fournette, only 49 yards. Terrible. Brady, 36 for 54 for most of the game. 281 yards, 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes of the game. Amazing. And horrible.
Amazing and horrible at the same time. And
yes,
watched the majority of the game, and I had a lot of Bucs fans that, talked to me, and we're on Twitter and we're on Facebook talking about this game, saying, how bad it was and how they had no belief. And I get it. Todd Bowles punting in the fourth quarter there, not necessarily, once again, the greatest confidence, but at the end of the day, he definitely was right about his decision-making. And hats off to this defense, ranked 5th in the National Football League, just getting it done, keeping that team in the game versus the Saints. And a big play was Keanu Neal, because it looks like the Saints are going to convert that big-time third down conversion, 3rd and 17.
Man, yes,
Hill is wide open. Yes, and Keanu.
How can that happen?
Well, it happened early on in the game. So it was Neal, who was the one who made the play, was on the spot. And then you get the ball back. Mike Evans, you thought that he wasn't going to be a big part of the game. Well, actually, you thought he was going to be more of a part of the game because Marshawn Lattimore was out. He starts to get involved. He goes out. Scotty Miller comes in, gets a big third down conversion. Julio Jones makes an unbelievable catch to set up the winning to Rashard White, who's a rookie. Two rookies last night showing out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and once again, Tom Brady wins, and everybody forgets about the majority of the night. Now, let me ask you this, because we ask questions here on Timeout. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with my co-host, Mr. Chris Cuff. If they don't win that game, do you feel like you should fire Byron Leftwich at that point? Do you feel like you should move on from a Todd Bowles? Because it was the right decision to punt the ball, but this offense, once again, extremely conservative, only scoring 17 to 18 points a game. They got to do better than this, right, Chris?
Right. And then even the words like that Bowles was saying, to the sideline reporter, it was like milk toast. Yeah, you gotta cover your guy, you gotta execute, you gotta come on, man. He could say we're playing like crap. The guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and that's what you see on the scoreboard. They got to do better. Little fire. He's just so mellow, just so laid back and comfortable looking, and it seems like Brady saved him yet again. That's what it felt like.
Well, that's absolutely what it felt like. Brady saves him again, saves Byron Leftwich, saves this offense, and may have saved this team. Although, once again, going back to it, the defense was a big part of it last night. With that being said, Brady commented today on his Let's Go podcast, and he talked about navigating the emotional challenges that come with age. He said, I think there's so many ways for me. It just keeps a great perspective for me in my life. Why have I done it for as long as I have? Physically, I've explained that. I've tried to take care of myself, mentally, and we talked about it with Coach Sean Payton. There's such a drive mentally to always come up with the next great play or the next great concept or the next great scheme. And then emotionally, that's where I think you get older, the challenges really come in, because we can't get distracted by other parts of our life, and not distracted in a bad way, but there's priorities that take over. So I try my best over the years to maintain what's important to me, and been very fortunate to play a sport that I love. And as I said, why do I play? Because the competition is great. Obviously, it's a great thrill and joy to go out there and play, but you're a part of something that's way bigger than yourself, and there's something to be said for that. Now, once again, Brady's statistics last night, pretty good, especially those last two drives. So once again, Chris, you can notice it and you can see it. This offense is struggling right now, and it's not only the pressure getting to him, because the offensive line was missing Tristan Wirfs, their best offensive lineman, did a pretty good job, but still getting pressure in his face, which is, rushing his passes. He's trying to get rid of the passes as fast as possible, but he's still missing those deep passes. He missed about 3 big plays.
Yes, he did.
The difference is, with this team only scoring 17 to 18 points a game, they were scoring 30 because they were able to push the ball down the field. You could see that Brady has lost some accuracy, especially last night.
He has, and his age is showing a little bit, but it's just he's so used to the pressure of that situation. He's been in it so many times. It's someone that you just worry about him, just like Aaron Rodgers. Same thing.
Sure.
You give him a minute and he's 7 down or 14 down. You can't relax, and it just seems like, I don't know if the Saints pulled back, went into a more of a defensive mode, kind of pulling back, but the guys were open. They were getting those crosses, getting those angles. Brady was on point. He had the windows to hit those passes, and he just knocked it out of the park. Easy peasy. Just another walk down the main, man. Walk down memory lane. And same thing. It's easy for him.
It was easy for him, and I feel like this team going forward should exercise that 2-minute drill, because the tempo is better. There's more urgency to it, and I would like them to come out next week versus another tough matchup in the San Francisco 49ers, which we'll get to in a moment here, playing the Miami Dolphins. That was a shocker. And what happened in that game. But come out, establish your identity, have some urgency, get up, so you don't have to come back in the fourth quarter. Now, to put this in perspective, NFL teams with most games scoring 17 points or less in 2022 in their records in those games. Now, check out these teams. The Texans, 11, 1-9-1. The Broncos, 11, 3-8. The Colts, 11, 2-8-1. And Bucs, 10, 6-4. Amazing what greatest of all time can do for you. Once again, they play the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Yes. So
let's talk about the Niners and the Dolphins, man. Yeah. How did you see that game this week?
Well, I was surprised because the Dolphins came out the first drive, 75 yards. They score a touchdown right away. But the big story was their offensive line injuries. And going back to Tampa, that's hindered them. It looks like it's going to hinder the Miami Dolphins and Tua in this game. You look at his numbers, not necessarily the best. 18 for 33, 295, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And if you're going to try to beat the number 1 defense in the National Football League, first and foremost, you got to protect your quarterback, which they didn't do a good job of on Sunday. And furthermore, when you turn over the ball and you're not accurate, that's the problem with the Miami Dolphins. And right now they're suffering because not only Teron Armstead is out, but also Austin Jackson is going on the IR. You're starting guys that you don't believe in, and you just signed former number 1 pick Eric Fisher. So right now, as explosive as this offense has been with Tua and, of course, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, it didn't happen on Sunday versus the 49ers, even without a Jimmy Garoppolo.
And he's shown that throughout his career. If Tua doesn't have the time, he can't do it. He can't make that magic. It's just as simple as that. But on the other side of the ball, I mean, Jimmy G, you got to feel for him. I saw the replay. Basically, if you look at the outside of your right foot and you have a 300-pound man stomp on the middle of the outside of your right foot, that hurts. And that you could feel the crack in his foot, man. It's a shame. He was having a good year. He was holding it down, but they got Mr. Purdy, man. Tried to finish the game for him. They won. So he had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 210 yards. So he did okay.
That's the thing, though. I mean, can he last? Can he survive? Can he get it done for a 49er team that at the end of the day is in contention in a lot of people's eyes here for a Super Bowl? Because not only do they have that talented defense, which they have their own fair share of injuries right now, but they still are the number 1 ranked defense in the National Football League. Can they get by with Mr. Irrelevant? Or do you think defensive coordinators will start to figure out Mr. Purdy?
I think they will. I think they'll figure him out, figure out his weaknesses, and attack them. Simple as that. But only a few games left, so we'll see how it goes.
And, of course, only a few games left with the Dolphins falling behind. Of course, the Bills taking care of business on Thursday night versus the New England Patriots. Yes. And the last couple of matchups between the Patriots and the Bills has not been close. So now the Bills are 9-3. The Dolphins are 8-4. I guess my question is Miami a Super Bowl contender without this offensive lineman, or do I deserve a timeout for that thought?
I think you deserve a timeout, because I think they can do it. They still have a few things to work out, a few kinks to work it out, but I think they can do it. They have such a powerful offense, and they'll figure out the scheme to still make it happen, get those guys open, score some points.
And I think you deserve a timeout, my friend, because at the end of the day, if you don't have an offensive line, and I always go back to a couple years ago talking to Deion Sanders, a former Miami Hurricane, and I asked him before the game, could the Bucs beat the Kansas City Chiefs? And he told me absolutely. You know why? Because their offensive line wasn't good. They were missing 2 of their main tackles at that point. Lots of shifting around. We've seen it across the NFL not only hurt the Bucs, but also the Rams. And if you start having injuries to that position and you don't necessarily have the quality depth, and you're signing an Eric Fisher, who was a number 1 pick in 2013 off the street, I don't think he's a Super Bowl contender. And it showed last Sunday. It may be a bad game, or it may be foreshadowing things to come. Let's go out to the other team here, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and just think that they're turning the page here. Everybody's getting Trevor Lawrence bandwagon. He's come to life. You look at his numbers. I mean, the numbers are just ugly. The Detroit Lions put it on him, 40-14. Jacksonville falling to 4-8. I got to tell you right now, I was disappointed because I'm a betting guy, and I took the Jaguars.
Oh, no.
And I lost some money.
17-31, 179 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yep.
Sacked two times for 14 yards. I mean, Trevor had a bad night. Bad night.
Defense had a bad night. You look at the total yardage here. The Lions 437, 337. Jared Goff right now playing some good football. They're getting Jamal Williams, who I believe I saw this, 14 touchdowns, and he has as many touchdowns as the Denver Broncos, and of course the talented running back out of Georgia, DeAndre Swift, also contributed in there, and just no defense at this point. Offensively for the Jaguars, 3 for 12. You're never going to do anything at the end of the day. Just not a great game. I guess you turn the page. And right now, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with the Detroit Lions lately, because even though you see their record at 5-7, they have definitely played over their head. Whatever Dan Campbell is doing is absolutely working, Chris. And it certainly seems like this Lions team is starting to figure out how to win not only these close games, but it was nice to see a blowout finally, because this team,
right,
the majority of the year, has not been able to finish. Well, they finished the Jaguars on Sunday.
they sure did, and it's Jacksonville's 20th consecutive loss to an NFC team. Horrible. It's a
Horrible.
conference record losing streak. They have not won an NFC team since beating the Giants 20-15 in 2018. I mean, that is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, absolutely. But I'll tell you what is not ridiculous. The opportunity here to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, who got all kinds of revenge, and that would be in part because A.J. Brown had 2 touchdowns, over 100 receiving yards, as they absolutely throttle the Tennessee Titans. And I don't know the reason, not only A.J. Brown, but Jalen Hurts in this game, 29 for 39, 383 touchdowns. And even his teammate, Darius Slay, mentioned that he should be in that conversation as an MVP. From what you saw,
together,
right, of Jalen Hurts after last year, 16-9, now you got 20-6. Do you feel like he should be in that MVP conversation?
I think he should. He's getting up there. He's getting more and more solid. I mean, they are 11-1, and he's leading them down that road. Jalen is one of the premier quarterbacks of the league this year for sure.
And I think the big time thing going into this game, the matchup was Derrick Henry versus this Eagles rush defense, which is 17th in the NFL, but they did a good job holding him at bay. He really didn't do anything. They really had nowhere to go for the Tennessee Titans. And so much so, they fired their general manager today in the season. John Robinson was relieved of his duties. A completely odd firing. I don't quite understand it, because you're 7-5. You're 3 games up in your division. Make some sense of this. This is a bad move by the Tennessee Titans. Do they deserve a timeout for firing Robinson?
I don't know if he deserves a timeout or not. The timing is just kind of strange as why they're going to fire them at this point in the season. But I'm not sure about that. I will say this, the shame, and you can see the picture of this game. Ryan Tannehill led the Titans in rushing with 34 yards. Henry only had 30 on 11 carries. That's a problem.
That's a problem, but why fire your general manager, your guy that built this team up? Well, Ryan Cowden now taking over as the Titans VP of player personnel, will take over as the interim GM. And then her announcement, Titans owner Amy Adams Strunk said the team made significant progress both on and off the field through investments in leadership, personal new ideas, but then there is more to be done and higher aspirations to be met. I want to thank John for his dedicated work to set this organization on an upward trajectory, and I wish him and his family the best. Once again, I think it goes back to the trade. You get rid of A.J. Brown, and he's been an absolute superstar, and it kind of reminds me, going back to the Eagles, when they were able to acquire Terrell Owens, their T.O., it absolutely turned around Donovan McNabb. It's absolutely turned around Jalen Hurts, and this is what you envisioned at the end of the day. This is the reason why the Buffalo Bills made a trade for Stephon Diggs. You see now Josh Allen taking off. This is what they envisioned for it, and it's happening right before our eyes this year.
The Miami Dolphins, they get Bordeaux, they get hurt. They loaded up as well on receiver spot, and it picked his game right up. Now, the weapons, man, they can do the work.
Now, you remember here, and again, A.J. Brown caught 8 passes for 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he also said, I wanted to retire a Titan. I try to do everything in my power to remain a Titan. It's a business. Once again, in that situation, I had to grow up. I just had to learn it was a business. I wanted to make them regret that decision. It's been personal since the trade. That's where I wanted to be. Things didn't work out. It was kind of like, here you go. We don't want you anymore. You just kind of get pushed to the side in that situation. I had to grow up. Of course, the Titans have gone at least 9-7, made the playoffs, and 4 of the past 6 years since Robinson was hired in 2016. From where? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So there you go. That's stories of the day right there. I got to talk about your Dallas Cowboys. I know how much
Please do.
you are.
Please do. Yes,
A
sir.
54-19 absolute disgrace by the Colts. Thanks a lot for not showing up. Jeff Saturday, that move just looks so bad, not only with the clock management issues, but the lack thereof of the effort of this team, especially in the fourth quarter. But the
33 points.
Talk
Dallas. Oh,
how
my gosh.
impressed were you with your Dallas Cowboys, and are they for real? Because there's another story coming out we'll get to, but talk about those Dallas Cowboys last Sunday.
Let's talk about them, man. They just keep, it's business as usual. They keep working to get better and better. The defense is getting tighter and tighter, and Dak is getting more comfortable with these receivers, man. They're just getting more and more tight in their work together. Still an interception, still a bad interception in that game, but I mean they rocked it. I mean, they 33 points in one quarter. Even I couldn't believe that. I mean, nuts.
Yeah, absolutely nuts at the end of the day. And I tell you right now, who's really stepped up, not only CD Lamb, but also Michael Gallup. And a lot of people are talking about OBJ. He's getting the old school treatment, if you will, getting recruited, getting taken out to dinner, wine and dine, taken to a Mavericks game by all kinds of teammates. Gallup was even asked about this at the end of the game, and he didn't even know anything about it. He said, well, I better get in on that. So with all that being said, do you feel like that's a sign of OBJ signing with the Dallas Cowboys? Or, as recent reports suggest, maybe he could be interested in reuniting, and it feels so good, with the New York Football Giants?
Well, something just broke just before we started recording.
Really?
That Dallas is concerned about OBJ because of his the repair of his knee. That he might not be ready to fully play until mid-January.
Wow.
So that's a factor, and that's a big factor, especially with Dallas dominating so far on offense, that they might not need OBJ.
Well, and the reports are, and of course, OBJ hurt himself during the Super Bowl, of course, playing for the Rams, and now is in recovery, and we'll see if he can play. But all reports would suggest not only are the Cowboys after him, the Giants are after him, and also the Buffalo Bills. And I thought at a point that maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be after him, but now Julio Jones is healthy. So, basically, I think it's down to those three teams. And if there's a team out there that's willing to give him a long-term deal and you don't need him right away, and I feel like Dallas is a great move because you have CD Lamb, you have Gallup at the end of the day, you have all these weapons. It's okay to wait for him and see if he can come and get healthy. And if he can, then down the stretch, he's definitely going to be an important part of that offense when it comes to the playoffs and possibly Super Bowl time.
He could dominate as a slot receiver. I mean, can you imagine him as your slot receiver?
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be fantastic.
All right. So 3 weeks ago, McDaniels, and this would be Josh McDaniels of the Raiders. His seat was so hot that it felt like he might spontaneously combust. But since then, things have cooled down. And now the Raider coach has his team on a 3-game winning streak as they disposed of the Chargers, of course, being led by Josh Jacobs. I mean, what do you think about the Raiders? Because I've been critical. I thought McDaniels should have been fired, but right now they're turning it on.
They're turning it on. They're getting it together, man. Gosh, the Raiders, it's amazing to see where they've come because they look like end of story. Just shut it down and get ready for next year. And they're showing some life. Good for them. Good for them, but they're not going anywhere. But, it's nice little entertainment for here to there instead of it just being a black hole in the Death Star,
Well, it is, and you have Devontae Adams there. Again, you talk about Jacobs. The defense has been disappointing, but they played better as of late. And McDaniels needs every win at this juncture because, believe it or not, I still think there is an opportunity there that if he doesn't win enough games, he could be one and done, especially with Mark Davis just saying. Now, Deshaun Watson in his return to the Cleveland Browns. Now, Cleveland wins this game, but he was less than impressive. I mean,
are you surprised? Let me ask you, are you surprised by his performance after being gone for so many games?
No.
700 days?
Yeah, it was. And I tell you right now, everybody deserves a timeout if they thought that Deshaun Watson was going to come in there as an all-pro and set the world on fire. He hasn't played in nearly 2 years. He was definitely going to be rusty. And I tell you, at the end of the day, what needs to be said is that Brown defense has stepped up the last couple weeks, of course, beating the Bucs, and also now beating the Texans, who are just absolutely awful. And they did it in ways of creating turnovers on special
yes.
teams. And that's what it comes down to, 3 facets of the game.
Yeah.
Offense, defense, and special teams. That's what the Browns did on Sunday, even with Watson not playing at his best.
Yeah, absolutely. So he wasn't all there. What do you have, 2 weeks of practice with the team?
Yes.
After being out 2.5 years. Yeah, he's not going to have much to offer at first, but I mean, we'll see some skill in a few weeks. We'll give it to him for sure.
Yeah, well, so we'll go down the playoff picture right now in the AFC. The Bills are number 1 at 9-3. The Chiefs are 9-3. Of course, that was the other big story that we haven't talked about. The Cincinnati Bengals the last 2 years have defeated the Chiefs 3 times. Count them, 3 times. Joe Burrow should absolutely be in that conversation because he has definitely led a revival for the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you think about this team? I mean, the Bengals and the Chiefs, if they meet in the playoffs, to me, I almost feel like the Bengals are the kryptonite for the Chiefs.
Joe Cool is back, man. I mean, they had their numbers. It's really amazing how they struggled throughout this year, and then finally, it's like they're unbeatable. They just pull through, just like Brady. It's like young Brady is back, and man, I mean, they were fantastic, man. They just shut them down.
That's it. And at the end of the day, the Chiefs were in it. They were looking at 9-3. They were looking at number 1 seed. Now the Buffalo Bills are 9-3, and I feel like the Buffalo Bills need that because not only Josh Allen is a little bit banged up, but also you get that home field advantage. The weather conditions, so it definitely favors that team. And if you're the Dolphins or your team that's used to the warm weather and you have to go up there and play in those type of conditions, it's not necessarily the best conditions, if you will.
Yeah, and the Bengals got their magic pill back, which is Jamar Chase. He comes back on the field, and Joe Burrow is another quarterback altogether.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So the Ravens 8-4, the story of that today is even though they barely survived the Denver Broncos, which they were, offense was terrible in that game.
Yeah.
Very limited, 10-9. They lose Lamar Jackson, and the reports today are he has a PCL injury, so he's going to miss the Pittsburgh game. Of course, that is a traditional rivalry with the Steelers. It could be 1 to 3 weeks. In your opinion, how much of a loss is that?
It's a huge loss. It's a big part of their offense. They did do okay with their replacement and in their backup, but man, I mean, Tyler Huntley did okay. 27 for 32, 187 yards and a touchdown. But Lamar is the center of their offense. But my question is, should they still pay him? He's not guaranteed. No agent. I'm wondering, how that negotiation is going to go. Him out 1 to 3 weeks with this yet another injury stopping his season, which has gone over and over and over again during his play with the Ravens.
They may have a good problem on their hands here, Chris, because if Huntley plays well, then it'll maybe give them some cause for pause and say, this guy be the quarterback of the future. But I do believe they're not going to sign him to a long-term deal. It's more and more looking like it's going to be a franchise deal, which they have the right to do that. And if he asks for a trade, he can either sit out and not take the money that's being put out there, which is like $30 to $40 million when it comes down to elite quarterbacks. Or you could play under that cap for the next 2 years, and we'll see how the Ravens handle that. But that'll definitely be a big-time story in the offseason because a lot of people kind of think that Lamar Jackson wants the type of money that Deshaun Watson got. There's a lot of NFL teams out there that are upset what the Browns did for Watson. And I feel like if you look at the numbers and you look at his career, his body of work, he's done a lot more than Watson at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that deal, I mean, I really just don't want to talk about it. It's kind of, disgusting after
Yes.
everything that happened. It's
Yeah.
very disgusting. They filled his wallet, had him sit for all that time, and now he's back on the field and rich. So yeah, it's really horrible, man.
And if you don't
Horrible.
know what you're tuning into right now, it's Time Out. I'm your
I'm
host.
out.
Yes, Time Out with my co-host there, Chris Cuff.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
keep looking at this playoff picture. You got the Titans here, 7-5. We talked about them. Still in the hunt. The Bengals 8-4, the Dolphins 8-4, and the Jets 7-5. Who
So
nearly
let's do this.
yeah.
We talked a little NFC East. Now the
Mm,
other two teams in the NFC East, they played to a tie, which is amazing. I mean,
right.
as tight as the NFC East is, all the teams are doing fairly well. Giants, Giants, and the Commies tied at 20. I'm not going to say that name, man. I'm sorry.
I don't get it. I don't understand the tie. I don't know why it's still in place. I don't know how you feel if you're a Giants or Commanders fan, but here's what you do know. First, it does count to a certain degree, whether it's a win or a loss. The tie definitely goes into effect. And then on top of it, you're going to have to play this team 2 weeks from now. So it's going to be
Right.
Giants and the Commanders once again in 2 weeks. Who wants to see that? And that could decide some part of that division. And maybe one of those teams misses out on the wild card. But I tell you right now, the Commanders right now seem like they're progressing. The Giants right now seem like they're regressing.
Yeah, I agree. They're both the Washington is definitely been a solid team. They've been winning and pushing forward. The Gents, man, I don't know, man. I think it's Danny Dimes. It's part of the problem, and then their staff, man, they don't have the personnel to keep that up.
Well, I mean, and the story has been the new coach Brian Daboll and what kind of attitude he's instilled in this team. They bought into it. Daniel Jones is still, in my opinion, a turnover machine. He's not going to get you anywhere with it. He has cut down on his turnovers, but he did have one last Sunday, and you depend on that running game with Saquon Barkley. If you get an OBJ, do you think that offense changes? Is that a possibility now that it seems like the Cowboys could be scared off? Are the Cowboys bluffing? Are they playing poker? What if OBJ goes to the Giants? Is that Giants offense turn around? Or once again, is it all on the shoulders of Daniel Jones?
Well, it is on Daniel Jones, but then again, we talked about Tua, we talked about Josh Allen, and then you have another quarterback getting a nice, solid weapon for him to target, which will bring things. Although he's going to have a little more to work with, so we'll see. But I don't think it's going to be enough to keep up with like Philly and Dallas, who are just ripping through teams right now.
They really are ripping through teams. Let's look at the NFC playoff picture. You got the Eagles at 11-1. The Vikings are 10-2. Nobody's talking about the Vikings as they survive the Jets 27-22. Once again, Mike White playing well. Couple interceptions there, but playing far better than Zach Wilson. But still, the Vikings able to pull that off. They're winning a lot of close games this year, and the numbers don't reflect it. And I think that's why a lot of people aren't putting the Vikings in that same type of conversation as the Eagles, but they could sneak in there. I mean, they're number 2. Who knows? You always are trying to go for the number 1 seed. You have the 49ers, of course, at 8-4. The Bucs at 5-6, playing in that god-awful NFC South. The Cowboys
amazing?
at 9-3 at the 5th seed. The Giants 7-4-1. And the Seahawks 7-5. Who Geno Smith shows that he's not just a flash in the pan. He could be the comeback player of the year with him leading that Seahawks team down for a winning touchdown versus the Rams, who were definitely upset-minded last Sunday.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. And then the Rams, get your boy, I don't know, man. Baker Mayfield, do you think he's going to help the Rams with his track record so far?
That was the story of the day. Also, Baker Mayfield, who's just waived by the Carolina Panthers, was now picked up by the LA Rams. Of course, Matt Stafford out for the year on the IR. You're playing rookie guys there that just aren't that good. First-year quarterback. They don't have that quarterback at that position. So do you got to take a flyer on a Baker Mayfield to answer your question? I'm not sure. Baker throws lots of interceptions. He makes terrible decisions, and then on top of it, he gets hurt. But He's got lots of potential. He was the #1 overall pick in 2018. Anything they got on that team right now, I think Baker is better. The thing is, can he pick up that offense? Can Sean McVay coach him up? And can he survive that god-awful offensive line? Because it was the same problem he had with the Cleveland Browns, even with leading them to the playoffs finally. The year after that, of course, was a disaster because the line was hurt. He got hurt again. So can he do anything for the Rams? I think at the end of the day, they're looking at potential. Matt Stafford's there. Why not? I don't know how much you expect out of a guy that basically doesn't know your offense.
Yeah, that, and I mean, he hasn't had the best track record. I mean, come on. I mean, he didn't have much to work with in Charlotte, of course, but I mean, even with the Browns, but I don't think he has what it takes, man. Not in the NFL level. And then if you look at the Rams, they're in last place. They're 3-9. San Francisco is running away with it, and the Seahawks are right behind them. I don't think the Rams have a chance the rest of this year. So maybe it's a test for the future. I don't know, but they're pretty much out of it.
Now, we talked about the 49ers and the Seahawks, and of course their injury troubles with Jimmy Garoppolo. With that injury, do you think that kind of opens the door up for the Seahawks to possibly take that division and surprise everybody? Because if you think about it, Chris, when Russell Wilson left, everybody left them for dead. Pete Carroll's over the hill. Geno Smith, once again, could be the most improved player this year. The defense playing better. And Ken Walker, even though he's a little bit banged up, has definitely solidified that running game.
Absolutely, man. Seattle's really been oppressive. Geno usually has 1 or 2 good games, and then he falls off. But he's kept it solid. He's had a couple of shaky games in between during the season, but he's really pulled through and really kept Seattle in the thick of it. So props to Seattle and Geno. And this is an opportunity for them to move up. I mean, Jimmy was the driving engine of that team. I mean, his game was back on point after being super shaky for years. They figured out the formula, but now he's out. So we'll see, man. Seattle, then the West is going to be interesting.
It's definitely going to be interesting. So, again, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Seahawks, and then the first teams that are out, the Commanders, which, again, that important game in the next 2 weeks when the Giants and the Commanders play again, that could decide a playoff position. And the Lions break up the Lions as they're 5-7. They still have an opportunity to compete for a playoff spot. Now, the Packers, who most likely are out of the playoffs, even with Aaron Rodgers, which is crazy to say. They're not going to get a playoff spot this year, but they have the most wins in NFL history as they beat the Bears. 787 all time, which is most by any team in NFL history. The Bears now rank second with 786 all time, and that has stood there since 1921, one of the longest rivalries of all time, completely owned by Aaron Rodgers. Once again, that guy owns the Chicago Bears, as bad as it's to say. You have Justin Fields, who everybody's watching, is the new kid on the block. Aaron Rodgers just continues to get it done, and the Packers make life miserable for the Chicago Bears.
Absolutely. You think this is it for Aaron? You think this is his last season?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it may be his last season with the Packers, and I'm not sure. I think mentally, physically, he's not all there. You start to see it with the quarterback getting up there in age. He's 39, 40 years old. Not everybody's a Tom Brady, and even Tom Brady will see the same thing with him on the decline when it comes to accuracy. But I just felt like when it started off this year, there were so many distractions, so much noise on and off the field. Of course, Jordan Love is the future. So even with them signing that big-time contract, $50 million to Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to find a trade partner. And look at the Packers are willing to pay the majority of that contract. I think there are plenty of teams out there, possibly, just saying, maybe the
They'll put up with that, huh? They'll put up with Aaron's shenanigans.
I think you can think of some other teams out there that, I mean, just think of some teams off the top of your head. Who would take Aaron Rodgers? Would he go to Houston? I don't know.
I don't know.
Houston.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
Saints possibly. They need a big-time quarterback. I mean, you could definitely think of some others. Just can't think of it right now.
I mean, let me ask you this. What do you think about Andy Dalton? Andy Dalton has been everywhere, and he makes the teams kind of
That's how
He'll
he
get
is.
them some wins. Yeah. He'll get them some wins, and then he's not good enough when it comes down to taking them to the next level. It's amazing.
Well, it is amazing, but he is the, prototypical don't lose the game quarterback, and that's been the problem lately with Dalton. He's turned over the ball, didn't turn over the ball last night, but he's a quarterback that's not going to take you anywhere at the end of the day. But to be fair, he was outplaying Tom Brady for the majority of that game last night. So how does he continue to get jobs? Because he usually doesn't turn over the ball. He can still make all those throws. He's somewhat of an intelligent quarterback. And in the Saints' eyes at this juncture, he's a lot better than Jameis Winston, and that's saying a lot because has put up some numbers, but once again, he's also had the turnover problem. So in that game against Green Bay, Christian Watson, with his touchdown catch against the Bears, now has 7 over the past 4 games, which is tied with Randy Moss and Odell Beckham for the most touchdown receptions by a rookie in a 4-game span since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970. Have you seen this kid? He's locally here from Tampa. They used to call him the Tampa Bay Tornado. And I tell you right now, he is just unbelievable. Bad start to the season, of course, a critical drop versus the Vikings, which, kind of set the tone for not only that game, but the whole season. But Watson is really eating right now.
He is, man. And they're just getting to work. It's good to see these young players finally come up after battling and just working their way into the systems and learning to be a professional player. And then they can show their talents once they get the time in, get the minutes, and get the play time. Really, get your lumps, get slammed around, whatever. Learn what not to do. Learn how to prep as a professional. And it's really good to see these young talents come up. Can we flip a little bit and just go over to college football?
Well, I want to go to college football, but I want to point out some of these numbers, and then we can go back to college football here. Okay. Time out for you, because I'm hosting this. You are the co-host. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with Chris Cuff here on Timeout.
Drive the train.
The Commanders and Giants gave us the second tie of the NFL season, marking the first time since 2018. You've seen 2 ties happen in the same year. In a twist, this was the Giants' first tie since 1997 against who?
Washington. Yeah, I did see that. Yep.
First tie since 2016 when they faced the Bengals in London. Also, Commanders, that's when they had their tie. Jalen Hurts is through for 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, while also adding a rushing touchdown. Of course, we talked about that big-time Philadelphia win. He is the first player in Eagles history to finish with 350 yards passing or more along at least 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdowns in a single game. Again, we talked about the MVP conversation.
Right.
Justin Fields, we talked about him, 56-yard touchdown, making him the first quarterback in NFL history to have at least 3 career rushing touchdowns of 50 yards or more. Got to get your thoughts on this kid because a lot of people say Lamar Jackson. Others say possibly Jalen Hurts. I mean, what do you see with this kid when you see Justin Fields starting for the Chicago Bears? Is he the future franchise quarterback for that team?
He is. He's so skilled, and the amazing thing is he's just getting started. So he's still learning the ropes. He hasn't played that long, and just to imagine him in 2 or 3 years is pretty scary. His passing is right there with his rushing. So he's just going to get better and better, and he is part of the future. It's amazing. He's not a big bulk like Josh Allen, but he blows past everyone. And he's not a shake and bake type of runner like Michael Vick used to be. He's just a solid player on both ends of the offense. So it's interesting if they have the right coaching, right team around him. We'll see what Chicago can do because they got a special player there.
They definitely got a special player there. They got to build around him. They're going to have over $100 million, so they're going to be able to not only supplement their talent with offensive line help, wide receivers, but also defensively getting rid of Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks. I mean, they've had all kinds of losses, Khalil Mack. So they definitely will have some funds. Now, Aaron Rodgers still does own the Chicago Bears with his 25-5 against the Bears, making him the 3rd quarterback since 1950 to win 25 of his first 30 starts against a single opponent.
Wow.
Rodgers joins Tom Brady versus the Bills. He's absolutely killed them. And Ben Roethlisberger versus the Browns. And then,
Yeah.
of course, for the Rams, and we'll finish up with this and we'll go to college football. 3-9. They could have the worst record of any reigning Super Bowl champion through 12 weeks. They also are on track to finish with the worst record by a reigning champion since 1999, when the Broncos went 6-10 after John Elway retired. The Rams, tough times right now. Let's switch gears to college football. We have our 4 participants. We know who's playing who at this juncture. Of course, it's number 1, Georgia. Michigan at number 2, as they took care of business in the Big Ten Championship over Purdue, 42-22. And then you have TCU, who kind of faltered. They picked up their first loss of the year versus Kansas State.
Yeah.
And fourth one, because of USC losing on Friday night. And once again, I'm a betting man. I bet on that game with Caleb Williams when he was shaking. Ohio State gets in. Did the committee make the right decision?
I think they did. I think they did. Kansas State, I mean, watching that game, they just blew. They went blow for blow with TCU.
Correct.
What a powerful game. What a powerful display. It's going to be interesting when there's more slots for the playoffs coming up, but we can only pick 4. I am not upset that Alabama is not in there.
Right.
It's good to see Nick Saban humbled for once. Ohio State slides in. So it is a shame we can't see Ohio State and Michigan before we get to the big games. But these games are going to be ridiculous because all 4 of these teams are powerhouses.
So the matchups will go like this. Number 4, Ohio State will face number 1, Georgia. In the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which, by the way, I love Chick-fil-A. Just saying. I wish it was open on Sundays, but let's go there. And number 2, Michigan will face number 3, TCU, and the Verbo Fiesta Bowl on December 31st. Who do you see coming out of that, and why?
Okay, TCU, Michigan. From what I've seen of Michigan, what they did to Ohio State, I'm a believer. I'm a believer, bro. I think they're going to come through.
Okay.
And then Georgia is going to take out Ohio State. That's going to be such a amazing game, but I think Georgia has it. I really do. They have a blueprint from watching what Michigan did, so we'll see. But it's a tough call, but I think Georgia will pull through. And then Michigan, Georgia for the final. I mean, wow.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely come back to that because we'll get your prediction again, but that's an early prediction. I think the same thing. I think it's going to be Georgia and Michigan that's going to play up in a rematch where Georgia absolutely blew their doors off. There's been talk of Jim Harbaugh leaving for the NFL. I don't see that happening. The only way, in my opinion, that would happen here, Chris, is if they do win a national championship. Then you can go off into the sunset and do your NFL thing. And, oh, by the way, just saying the Colts position is open. Former Captain Comeback himself, Mr.
Comeback, yes, sir,
as the coach there would make lots of sense. Now, Alabama was absolutely trying to Nick Saban was trying to be a politician lobbying for his team on Saturday. USC and TCU lost. If we played any of those teams that are on the edge of getting in, would we be the underdogs or the favorite? He said this on the Fox halftime show of the Big Ten Championship. Of course, they did not get in.
No.
And I'm happy to see them not get in. I'm disappointed that USC didn't take care of business because Caleb Williams, if you watched him before he was shaken up, making some tremendous throws, looking a lot like, and I think this is the comparison right now with quarterbacks, not only in college football, but also the National Football League, Patrick Mahomes.
Absolutely. Caleb Williams, he's awesome. But, that game was tough. But just looking at it, I mean, I had to look up what a Ute was, first of all. Like, what is a Ute? Turns out that's the tribe that the state of Utah was named after, because they were saying Utah Utes during the game. But I mean, that was a great performance by Utah, and knocked them out. knocked
Yes.
them out. So, but we have a spectacular playoffs coming up. Some good games to
Absolutely.
watch.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing what these teams do because you never know at the end of the day, Chris, what can happen now.
Right.
Of course, we kind of talked about this. There was some breaking news last week where it looked like Deion Sanders was 90% sure. Decision going to the USF Bulls. That did not transpire because you heard afterwards he was basically visited USF. He was using this program to get to Colorado. Of course,
Yes.
Colorado. The Buffaloes finished 1-11 also, like USF. Well, they made him the official coach. Deion Sanders stood in front of the Colorado football team and said,
I'm coming. Not to compete, but to win. Not to show up, but to show out. Not to be amongst the rest, but to be the best. I'm coming. I'm flat out coming. This is real. This ain't no ESPN or this ain't one of the networks you just happen to see me on. I'm right in front of you. It ain't gonna be no more of the mess that these wonderful fans, the student body, and some of your parents have put up with for probably 2 decades now. I'm coming. And when I get here, it's gonna be changed. So I want y'all to get ready to go ahead and jump in that portal and do whatever you're gonna get. Because the more you jump in, the more room you make.
So you're basically just calling him out, some tough love there. Some people go, you shouldn't have left Jackson State. He had no business. They like to see him. He sold out. But at the end of the day, I always say this, Deion Sanders was an NFL player who made a song about it's all about the money in the mid-90s.
Must be the money.
It must be the money. It is all about the money at
Yes,
this
sir.
time, and it is a great opportunity. He also said this, we got a few positions already taken care of because I'm bringing my luggage with me, and it's Louis.
It's
Louis. And if you don't know what that means, Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton, yes.
Yes.
Not bringing any crap with me.
And yeah, I'm coming, and ain't going to be no more of this mess that these wonderful fans, the student body, and some of you parents have put up with for probably 2 decades now. I'm coming, and when I get here, it's going to change. I want you all to get ready. Go ahead, jump in the portal, do whatever you're going to do, because the more you jump in, the more room you make.
Yes.
Your thoughts on this? Because at the end of the day, this was an impressive display. Deion has always been impressive when it comes to social media and speaking as a coach. Can he turn around this program in the Big 12 with the uncertain future of USC, possibly UCLA, Oregon still being in there? Can he turn this around, in your opinion, in the next couple of years?
He's going to need some time, but what he brings is a spotlight, attention. You saw him. I mean, I watched that video of his speech. He was preaching a sermon. I mean, that was a sermon.
Yes.
He's looking down at notes, and my mouth was open. I was like, if I was one of those guys in that seat, I would have been sweating, because he's like, you guys have been playing like crap, basically, and you're gone. We're going to bring in people that want to be here and that are good enough to be here. He's inspiring. He's good at driving people to work and do what they need to do. They just have to build up the talent base. Even though he's bringing his son and probably his other son, he said he's mad at his other son. He's in the doghouse, so he didn't bring him with him. But and they got the money. They got the money. Well, they said that's another thing. He was promised all this money, and then the one of the administrators says, "Oh, we don't have it yet." So that's interesting. So there's got to be a lot of booster action going on in Colorado, but everyone is talking about Colorado all of a sudden. That wasn't the case before, and I think he can do it. The other side of it is he made some promises at Jackson State. He did phenomenal things at Jackson State. It was a typical HBCU. Little funding. They had talented players, but they didn't have the funding or the attention, didn't get the chances at the NFL that the Power 5 schools did. And he brought the attention there, had top recruits switching teams and coming to Jackson State, and then turned around their record in 3 years. He did a phenomenal job there, and they got a bunch of funding because of Deion. So he's taken all that train up to Colorado. Jackson State, he leaves them in pretty good shape. We'll see what's left that can work and see what they can do with that. He can't stay forever. He said, as a head coach, you either get eliminated or elevated. And he said, I'd be a fool not to look at other offers from bigger schools. And he did, and he left. I don't blame him going from what, 300,000 to 3 million, 30 million. It's a no-brainer.
It's definitely a no-brainer. Of course, he's bringing his son there and possibly cornerback Travis Hunter, i.e. the Louis Vuitton luggage. Dozens of roster spots are up for grabs at this point. So it should absolutely be very interesting what Mr. Primetime does with the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, USF was in that conversation. They also hired a new coach. I hope I pronounce his name correctly. Alex Golesh, offensive coordinator of Tennessee, #1 in most categories. The problem is with a lot of USF fans out there, as they're kind of comparing him to Jeff Scott, who of course only had 1 win this year, is the fact that he doesn't have any head coaching experience, but the comparisons from other sources down here say he could be the next Jim Leavitt. So, in your opinion,
let me ask you, what do you think of this hire?
Remains to be seen. I've seen the press conference. The guy seems intelligent. I like Jeff Scott too. You see what he did with Tennessee. He's a hot hire because Cincinnati wanted him. There were other teams out there that wanted him. He decided to choose, of course, USF. So they got lots of work to do. I mean, it comes down to not only offensive scheme, but it also comes down to recruiting. Can he recruit in the state of Florida? Can he recruit outside of the state of Florida and get those blue chip prospects to commit here? It's going to be tough. It's a tough sell. So you're going to definitely have to sell it. And then at the end of the day, the biggest problem for USF was not offense, was actually defense. So who are you going to hire? It's defensive coordinator. Are you going to be able to turn this defensive staff around? If you can do that, who knows? Because USF in the past has gone all the way to #2 in the country. Of course, unfortunately, lose to Rutgers on Thursday night. But it can't be turned around. You just have to do it correctly. And I don't know how many years you're going to be able to have with this coach. Hopefully, it's not the same as Jeff Scott.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. In the same area, UCF played in the AAC championship and got throttled by Tulane down in New Orleans. I do have a nephew that's on the team. Shout out to Canyon Walker. Congratulations. You whooped up on UCF. So congratulations to you guys. And good luck, man. Good luck with you guys, because it was a great year for Tulane.
So Alex Golesh, the new coach of the USF Bulls. We'll see how that all works out. Give me some final thoughts here on Timeout, Chris.
Final thoughts. So much going on. Some awesome news. This is a great time to be covering sports. That's for sure. There's tons of stuff happening. MLB, different signings that we're trying to figure out where people are going, namely David Justice, Justin Verlander, and Jake DeGrom swapped teams. Well, they didn't swap teams. DeGrom went to the Rangers, and Verlander went to the Mets.
Did you say David Justice?
I'm sorry. No. Did I say David Justice?
I did say David Justice. Yes.
Aaron Judge. Here comes the Judge. Here comes the Judge.
Well, by the way, he was down here last night in Tampa. So could the Rays sign him? Absolutely not. The Rays are not going to sign him because that's not the kind of signings they're doing. But you're absolutely correct. Whether it's David Justice or Aaron Judge,
wow.
The issue is, does he go to the San Francisco Giants? Does he go stay with the New York Yankees? Could he go somewhere else? You saw Verlander goes with the Mets. Does that improve them? DeGrom going to Texas, does that help them out? We shall see, but it is a great time of year. Not only NFL football, you've got basketball, and of course, Major League Baseball free agency. For the great Chris Cuff, I'm your host, Peter Blake, here live on another edition of Timeout.
See you guys next time.